Okay. Hi. Pittsburgh just won the game. I just turned I just turned the TV off. Also, this is shorter than usual. I apologize. I suffered a lower back injury earlier this week, and standing after a long period of time really hurts. So that's why this is short. Or if I just randomly decide to sit down at some point, if that happens, that's why. That's also why we haven't anything uploaded to the social medias all week. But you guys are here to hear me talk about the Steelers. Okay. So Pittsburgh finished with 3 wins down the stretch to end the season, all 3 of which were led by Mason Rudolph as basically the starting quarterback. Not basically. What am I talking about? I was trying to come up with some fancy word there, but no, with Mason Rudolph, as a starting quarterback for those last 3 games. And okay, something I noticed after the Deontay touchdown is this a controversial statement if I say that Kenny Pickett could be Mason Rudolph if Kenny didn't roll out so much in the pocket? Because, I'm watching Mason, and I'm like, everyone loves Kenny because he doesn't turn the ball over. That's literally Mason. But Mason will take an occasional shot down the field, which we've seen Kenny do a couple times, but that's in a couple times over his entire starting span. We've seen Mason do that a lot. I mean, he literally did it at least once today in the span of the 3 games he started this season. But I was like, man, if Kenny could just sit in the pocket as much as Mason did and didn't just bail right away, then we could have a really good starting quarterback. But anyways, super props to Mason. If you like him, if you don't like him, he played a hell of a last 3 games, if this is going to be the last 3 games of the season. We'll talk about what ifs a little bit later. But yeah, I mean, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. Oh, I guess he technically, we didn't turn the ball over on that fumble, but he did fumble on a forward pass attempt, so whatever. But no interceptions, we'll say that. And that's huge. That's one of the biggest things. And the nice thing, too, is he wasn't being carried by the run game the entire time. The first game that he played, he carried the offense, essentially. I mean, he had a massive game in the pass game. You don't get George Pickens 195 yards in that game without, doing your shit. So it's not like he's been carried. And also, it's not like the defense has been bailing him out, because our defense, it's the same defense that led up 20 points last week to that Seattle team, which had been struggling. And, I mean, they did allow 11 points to the Bengals the week before, which is a really good stand by the defense, and also 10 this week against Ravens backups. But it's not like Mason is just being carried and he's not actually making a difference, because he clearly is. So we have to give him a huge props there. Next props, Naji Harris. 3 straight seasons of over 1,000 yards rushing. For all the people that were super quick to be like, yeah, Naji Harris is the next Trent Richardson. Y'all are idiots. And listen, I said that we needed to start Jalen as the RB1. I said that earlier in the season. And I still think that's kind of the case. But RB1 does not mean 80% of the snaps. It means 60 to 40, 55 to 45. That's what that means. But anyone who thinks Najee's a bust, they just don't watch the games. They box score watch and or they watch the occasional clips that go on Twitter where he is running slow. But here's the thing, and the commentators talk about this in the game, when we're playing vertically and not horizontally, which means running up the field instead of side to side, for anyone who got confused by that, when we're playing vertically, we're doing a really good job. That includes Naji. When we're running horizontally, it's almost always bad. The only times it's somewhat good is if it's a jet sweep to Calvin Austin who has a bunch of speed, or if it's a designed run and we have Jalen Warren in the backfield who can pop up field. He did not do that in the 2 opportunities he had this game. Jalen Warren actually had a really rough game today. He fumbled the ball. He fumbled the ball 3 or 4, almost 4 times, but he lost a fumble once, or was it twice? I think it was just the one. So yeah, he wasn't doing too much in the running game. I think he only had 36 yards. But nonetheless, huge props to Naji. I think they also said he had 8 touchdowns on the season, which is his most in the season, which is really weird that in 3 seasons, his most in a season is 8. But that really shows you how bad the offensive coordinating had been for the last 2.5 seasons. Shout out to Mike Sullivan. And, I did not just forget his name. There's no way I just forgot our running back coach's name. This makes me look like a casual. That's so embarrassing. All right, anyways, it'll come to me. Another thing that's really nice is we just it almost feels like they brought in a brand new playbook, which you can't do whenever you fire an offensive coordinator. That's the thing. Firing an offensive coordinator midway through the season is hard because he made the plays for the entire season. That's what they spent a majority of the offseason doing, is designing the playbook for the team. So when you fire him, you're essentially firing the person who's supposed to know that playbook best. That's why usually a lot of teams, before firing their offensive coordinator, they'll just change play callers to see, like, okay, maybe the plays in here are good, but the way you're calling them is shit, so we're going to have someone else maybe call that. But they said, no, we're going to fire you, and we're going to have one person be the offensive coordinator and another be the play caller. And it's been, for the most part, the same playbook, but, like, there have been new installations into our schemes. Like, we've been using the pistol in the last 3 weeks. That was something we really, or last 6 weeks, something we really didn't ever, if ever, use while we had Matt Canada as our OC. A lot more bootlegs, a lot more options. Like it's. I really like the design of the playbook. If this is like a little hint of what's to come in the next couple of seasons, I'm fine with it. This is at least a top 15 or top 20 offense as opposed to a bottom 20 offense. Does that make sense? That means you're in the worst 20, bottom 5 offense. We'll say that because that's how bad it's been the last 3 years. So yeah, shout out. And then Deontay finally had a really good game with Mason at quarterback, which is funny because I won't lie. When Mason was announced the starter, I expected Deontay to be like the number one, because when Deontay and Mason first started playing together the year Ben went down and Mason was playing, that was kind of like Deontay's little hint of his breakout season, that we're like, oh, this dude's gonna be someone. So I expected him to get a bunch of targets, but I mean, when you're putting one-on-one with George Pickens, it makes sense that you're going to, take advantage of that. But Deontay finally had a huge game, 71-yard touchdown, the longest by the Ravens, which, to be fair, it was the Ravens' second team, essentially. But yeah, there's that. Fucking Pittsburgh defense cannot go a damn game without an injury, especially to the secondary. So Eric Rowe got hurt, and he was questionable for return. So that sucks if we lose another safety. And then obviously if Pittsburgh does end up making the playoffs, like I said, we'll talk about what ifs in a second. If they do, they might be without TJ Watt, who I was so worried that it was going to be a non-contact injury. And I was like, please don't take this away from him, like the opportunity to play in the postseason, because he's never won a postseason game. Pittsburgh, the future Hall of Famer on your defense right now, has never won a playoff game. Think about that. He has more touchdowns in the playoffs. Our defensive star, who is a edge rusher, has more touchdowns in the playoffs than wins. Wrap your brain around that, all right? But I want him to have the opportunity to at least get one, and there's a chance that we have that this year. One thing I have not been doing, which I should have been doing when criticizing the defense, is take into account the injuries. Like last week, I complained about how there weren't that many adjustments in the 2-minute against Seattle, and how Seattle just kept dumping it underneath, and we weren't adjusting to that. Which still, every player, if coaches can say, well, of course this person deserves to be a starter. They're in the NFL for a reason. All right, I'm going to use that same logic. If you're in the NFL for a reason, then you should be able to make that adjustment. That's just how that works. You should have the IQ. If you're saying that every player deserves to be here, then every player should at least have the IQ to be like, oh, okay, yeah, they're dumping underneath. We're just going to play underneath. But I do also have to kind of bring up the fact that we're on our 4th, 5th, and sometimes 6th string middle linebackers, and we have a corner at safety who's 34 years old, and we have a practice squad at the other safety. So there's that as well. I can't really judge the defense off of this game because it was horrible conditions. We were playing essentially, no joke, this was kind of like a preseason team because they rested all of their number one receivers. They rested Isaiah Likely was out there, so they didn't rest their number one tight end, but they had some linemen resting, and they had some defensive players resting. So, but from our defense, it's hard to judge them because they're playing against a preseason team or like a practice squad team. Not a practice squad, but like a twos team. So I'm not really going to pay too much on there. I will say, though, TJ finished the game with 2 sacks, which means he is going to leave this season with 19 sacks in the regular season. Trey Hendrickson is in second place right now with 17. If TJ leads the league in sacks again and also, has a touchdown and a couple fumble recoveries and a couple forced fumbles and also a couple interceptions, and he's not the defensive player of the year, then voting needs to change. I'm sorry, it just does. And I've said this before. With the other 2 people that are in the running are Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett. And Myles Garrett, in my opinion, has way more to work with for an argument for Defensive Player of the Year than Micah Parsons. Because Micah Parsons started the season really hot, and it's just kind of dwindled out since. And Myles Garrett started hot, and he hasn't dwindled out. I mean, I think he still only has 13 sacks. But his presence alone on that defense is like one of the reasons why he is such a phenomenal defensive player. But I still just, no matter how good Myles is, and he's my 2 right now, not just 2 for Defensive Player of the Year. In my opinion, he's the second best defensive player in football right now. But I just think TJ is the best. I think that's the reality of that situation. And he's probably not going to win MVP or Defensive Player of the Year, which is insane. Yeah, I mean, there's not much I can take. There was some really bad play calls, which, like, the second play call of the game, we ran a pitch, and 1, the ball was bobbled, and 2, we didn't gain any yards. I think it took like a Jalen Warren masterclass to try and get back to the line of scrimmage. And Pittsburgh saw that and was like, oh, what's that? That was a disaster? All right, cool. We're going to pull that out on like a 3rd and 5 that's crucial later in the game. Which I'm like, really? That's what we're going to do? Last week, I was very skeptical of Pittsburgh passing the ball on 3rd and 5 against Seattle to ice the game when they could have just ran the ball, milked the clock, gotten a field goal, or gotten into field goal range. And I was like, passing was risky, but it paid off. Here, it was great because I was expecting them to take a shot at George Pickens, mainly because the commentators would not shut the fuck up about it. But Pittsburgh did the smart thing, which was make him use all the timeouts, use as much of the clock as possible, kick a point. Now you're up by 2 possessions nonetheless, rather than maybe turn the ball over, and then you just drive the length of the field, score the game, we go into overtime. Super smart. Also, this should not be like something I'm bringing up, but the fact that it is, because he's so bad at this. Man, Mike T, good use of your timeouts in this game. I think this is the first time all season you didn't use a timeout in the first quarter for lack of preparation. So, yeah, I mean, it's really hard to talk about this game just because of who we played and the players that played and the players that didn't play. So now let's talk about the what ifs. All right. What if Pittsburgh makes the playoffs? Sounds like we have to play, we'll probably be the 7 seed, so we probably have to play Miami. Pittsburgh's not beating Miami, guys. Even if Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are hurt for that game. Even if TJ Watt is playing in that game, Pittsburgh's not going to win that. So that's the hard thing is it's like it's nice we can put a mental award of saying, yep, we had a winning season and could have made the playoffs. But at the same time, it's like, man, now we're probably going to have so we're probably going to finish at like at least the 8. If we don't make the playoffs, we'll probably be like the 8 or 9 seed. So we're probably going to have the 17th overall pick. Awesome. And with the way we use our draft picks, they won't see the field until week 5 of next year. Even better. So that's the hard thing. And like I said, any given Sunday, especially in the playoffs, anything can happen. We've seen the lowest seed win a Super Bowl before. So anything's possible, but it's really hard, especially with the injuries. Like with TJ, especially out now, Minka still hasn't played. Trenton Thompson, who was a very, very big difference maker when he was playing. It's who knows. And now, what if Pittsburgh does make the playoffs? It doesn't really do anything. What are we gonna say? Well, we finished strong. No, we didn't. We won 3 games down the stretch. Okay. Were they 3 games that we were supposed to win? For being honest, no. But we also right now. So we ended the season 10-7. This is a season. Realistically, Pittsburgh could have ended at least 12-5. The Patriots and the Cardinals games should have been gimmies. And the Colts game should have been a gimme. So realistically, 13-4 was in the books. If you told me at the beginning of the season the Steelers would go 13-4, I would be like, Matt Canada turned this shit around, and that's amazing. We'll never know because it didn't happen. It should have happened. The games that Pittsburgh lost, where I'm like, yeah, nothing could have changed the outcome of those games. San Fran, 1,000%. Houston, even though Kenny got hurt, Pittsburgh was not playing a good game. And then it wasn't Baltimore. It was our first. No, those are the only two, because the Cleveland game that we lost, we totally could have won that one too. I remember that was the like inciting incident to get Matt Canada fired, because that was a huge moment. So no, okay, fine. Not even 14. So we could have been 15-2. What? Wild. But no, the Texans and the Niners game's 1,000%. It's like, yeah, no, there was nothing gonna happen there. But we'll never know, because Pittsburgh didn't. It's a wasted year. Making the playoffs, I will say it's not a wasted year, but then that's the thing, is it's like, is it a wasted year? Because it looks like Mason will probably start, which if we make the playoffs, you'd want your young, supposedly franchise quarterback. I'm saying that because that's the reports came out today that Pittsburgh still has faith that Kenny's going to be the future of this team. You should be using that for growth for your supposedly franchise quarterback. But if he doesn't play, then what's the point? All right, you're getting some growth for like Najee and Deontay and George Pickens and the younger guys, but like the quarterback's the one is the most important position on the offense, and like you, especially with a young guy, you want him to get that experience. So that's why it's just a lost season. We finished with a winning record. Cool. We're gonna get unless like a Derwin James falls situation happens, and someone falls to us in the draft, it's not really gonna make a difference. Oh, one person that should be not playing for the Steelers next year, Dan Moore. How are you getting your ass beat by 32-year-old Kyle Van Noy? Oh, my God. Mason is patient, sometimes to his detriment, but it's still nice to see some patience in the pocket. But Dan Moore almost costed us like 3 or 4 fumbles, because holy shit, Kyle Van Noy had his number the entire game. It's fucking embarrassing, man. If Pittsburgh has faith in him, fine, move him to guard. He's not going to play above Isaac. He's not going to play above James. Maybe he can snap the ball better than Mason Cole. 2 biggest things next season: left tackle, center. We need more than that, but those are very important. So that's great. Yeah, it just feels like a lost season. Do I think Pittsburgh will make the playoffs? I genuinely don't know, man. And we would need the realistic one is Miami beats. Is that the realistic one? Miami beating Buffalo, or is Tennessee beating Jacksonville more realistic? Because Trevor Lawrence might not play, and Mike Vrabel clearly wants to win this game. So I don't know. Technically, it's in our favor because it's above 50%. It's at 63% right now. But really, I would love to just have my head hit the pillow tonight after a Colts and Texans tie. Because, yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a lost season, so might as well just... Okay, that's the reality of the situation here. It's a lost season for Pittsburgh, so might as well just make the playoffs and see what happens. Maybe. Let's get TJ's first win, if he's even playing in that game. Yeah. Really nothing else that much to talk about. Podcast will come back tomorrow. Social media clips will come back. Yeah, I couldn't sit up. I couldn't sit down. I had to lay down for 3 days straight. Oh my God, I got so bored, guys. And I was in pain the entire... Pain and boredom mixed together is like the worst combination ever. Just the worst. So yeah, we'll have social clips back up this week. Podcast will be out Monday morning. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. The last video got a lot of traction. I think it was at like 1 point. What's that? Let's see. What was it at? My last video is at 1.5 thousand views. And how many comments? Wait, hold on. 28, really? Did not expect that. 1.5 thousand views, though. So if this one does well as well, we'll see what happens. Also, in that video, everyone was like, Mason's not the future of the team. Literally, the first words I said was no. The start of the video, I said, no, he's not. What, do you guys listen? People just click on videos, type, and then don't even watch it. I just know that they do that. But Eddie Faulkner, that's our running backs coach. Told you, I knew it just hit me out of the most random point ever. But yeah, shout out to Mason. I have to give him his props, man. He did what Mitchell Trubisky couldn't, and what a team with Matt Canada couldn't either. So he deserves his flowers. If he's not on this team next season, I hope he's given a starting shot somewhere for like if Atlanta doesn't make a big trade or draft a quarterback or like Minnesota or any of those teams, I hope that Mason gets a shot because he clearly has the IQ and the intangibles for it. And you know, it's kind of bittersweet to see a player on your team succeed elsewhere because you're like, see, we told you he was talented, but you wanted to keep Matt Canada the entire time. So, anyways, I'm going to put this together, go make dinner, and pray for a Colts-Texans tie. We'll see you guys back on Monday for the podcast. Bye, guys. Oh, I have to end this with the